Do you like movies? I know I do. I love movies. I like every type of movie except horror movies. I refuse to watch horror movies or go to scary events or watch horror-based TV shows, or you get the point. I will even go the extra mile for movies I really love. Lord of the Rings Extended Edition in the theater, back to back, did it. Even own them. Lord of the Rings Extended Edition, Hobbit Extended Edition, done. Have those. A full 9-movie Star Wars marathon leading up to The Rise of Skywalker, did that too. And in a theater. Twice. Did it with Force Awakens and then did it again. It was a 27-hour movie marathon. An in-theater Marvel marathon leading up to Infinity War. I didn't do it. I would have. I wish it was playing somewhere near me. I absolutely would have. And Marvel, if you do it again, I'm there. I promise. I will. 48 hours in the theater, my butt's in that seat. As much as I love movies, I really love finding strange behind-the-scenes facts, cool stories from film sets, and looking for Easter eggs in the background. So this list is gonna be one of my favorites. I can't wait, so let's just get rolling. I'm Mike with List 25, and here are 25 interesting and totally unrelated movie facts.
#25.
Ferris Bueller's Day Off. In the parade scene of the 80s classic John Hughes film Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Ferris, played by Matthew Broderick, rides on a float in the middle of the parade in downtown Chicago. You would assume that the film's producers staged a parade, closed some streets, hired a huge number of extras, and filmed the scene. You'd be wrong. Hughes and his production team decided it would be much easier just to bring their own float to the parade staging area and merge into the parade queue with the other floats. And that's exactly what they did. The result was Matthew Broderick cruising down a Chicago street lip-syncing to the Beatles' Twist and Shout while thousands of attendees looked on in confusion.
#24.
The 1988 dark comedy Heathers revolved around Winona Ryder as Veronica, the only non-Heather of an elitist 4-girl clique known as, well, the Heathers. When JD, Christian Slater, arrives on campus, Veronica falls for him and his dark and dangerous mystique. It soon becomes a little too dangerous when JD tricks Veronica into helping him kill the popular cliques at the school, namely the Heathers and the Jocks. The subject matter is pretty dark already, but it gets darker when you learn about 2 of the actors that appeared in the film. The character of Heather Chandler spoke the now infamous line, "Did you have a brain tumor for breakfast?" In 2001, the actress that played the role of Heather Chandler, Kim Walker, died of a brain tumor on March 6, 2001. The character of Peter, played by actor Jeremy Applegate, prayed that he would never commit suicide. But on March 23, 2000, Applegate died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound.
#23.
Black Adam. The upcoming Warner Brothers release Black Adam will tell the story of how the titular character becomes one of DC's most powerful villains. The movie, as many of you probably already know, stars Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as the title character. Black Adam will also star Aldous Hodge as Hawkman. When he got the part, Hodge didn't believe it had actually happened. At San Diego Comic-Con 2022, Hodge told the story of what happened when Johnson called him personally to give him the good news and welcome him to not only the production, but also the DC universe. When Johnson told him he was officially cast as Hawkman, Hodge told him to f*** off. During the Warner Brothers DC panel in Hall H, Hodge explained what caused his reaction. According to Hodge, he had been having problems with his phone being hacked. He'd been getting prank calls and texts and simply figured it was the same person messing with him. Once he was convinced that the caller DJ was actually Johnson, he thought he was being called so that DJ could tell him he did a great audition, but it wasn't going to work out. That was absolutely not the case. What Johnson actually said was, "Welcome to Black Adam and the DCEU." Hodge said he had to put the phone down because his brain exploded. See, he had been a comics fan for his entire life. He found inspiration in comic-based movies like Blade and Spawn, which feature African-American leads, that made him think he could be there someday too. He also explained that he feels the responsibility to live up to being an inspiration to others like him.
22.
The Wizard of Oz. While filming The Wizard of Oz, a wardrobe assistant needed to find an old, worn-out coat for the actor Frank Morgan, who played Professor Marvel and the Wizard, to wear in the black and white Kansas scenes before and after Dorothy's trip to Oz. The assistant found the perfect coat in a random Hollywood secondhand clothing shop. They took the coat to the set, and when Morgan put it on, he turned the pockets inside out and saw something written on the inside of one of the pockets. Upon further inspection, he read the words L. Frank Baum. You see, L. Frank Baum was the man who wrote The Wizard of Oz. And now, years later, his coat had found its way to a place where his creation was coming to life. The coat's authentication was even confirmed by Baum's widow.
21.
Candyman. Candyman is a film about an evil, vengeful urban legend come to life after being summoned by saying his name 5 times into a mirror. He also has a hook for a hand, meaning he's based on 2 different urban legends. Bloody Mary and, well, the Hook-Hand Man. The 1992 horror film is now considered a classic, listed on many must-see lists. One of Candyman's most iconic scenes is where he opens his mouth and bees fly out, and then Nick Cage screams, "Not the bees!" The bees were bred especially for the movie so that it would be only 12 hours old when they were put before the camera. Because of this, they looked like adult bees, but their stings were much less venomous. It was necessary because in the scene, when the actor playing the Candyman opens his mouth and the bees swarm, it was not special effects. Norman Gary, the bee wrangler for the film, needed over a half an hour to get the bees in Todd's mouth, and even more time to get them to cover Candyman's face. The only protection Todd was afforded was a mouth dam to keep the bees from crawling down his throat. Speaking of Todd, don't feel too bad. He had a special addendum to his contract that stated if he did the scene, he would get $1,000 for each sting. He was stung inside his mouth 23 times. You do the math.
20.
Jurassic Park. In 1993, Steven Spielberg's Jurassic Park brought dinosaurs to life in a way that had never been dreamed before. I maintain that if a real dinosaur was to be brought to life, most people wouldn't think it wasn't such a big deal because they've grown up with realistic dinosaurs through Jurassic Park and all the sequels, and in person through animatronics at places like Universal Studios. And what I'm saying is that Jurassic Park was so technologically well done that it molded people's perceptions of what dinosaurs were. But not everything was as technical as it may seem. When it came to what the animals sounded like, sound designer Gary Rydstrom searched for as many sources to provide dinosaur vocalization as he could. For the fierce, intimidating, pack-hunting velociraptors, Rydstrom used angry, annoyed geese for their screeches and horses for their breathing. And every time you hear the raptors communicating with each other in a series of barks and grunts, he used the sounds of tortoises having sex. So now they're not so scary, are they?
19.
Thor Ragnarok. Maybe you've heard this one before, but it's so uplifting that it won't hurt to hear it again. For the 3rd film in Marvel's Thor series, Chris Hemsworth and Taika Waititi decided to take the character in a different, light-hearted comedic direction. After the disappointment that was Thor: The Dark World, they both felt like audiences should see a different side of Thor. Fans were mostly positive about the new tone, though some disliked it and thought it demeaned the character, and the film was a huge success. What can't be argued is that Hemsworth has incredible comedic timing and his natural ability to improvise on the spot. One line from the film that was not scripted or improvised by Hemsworth came when Thor is in the Game Masters arena preparing to fight whatever emerges from behind a giant door. When Hulk appears, Thor is relieved and happy to see his Avengers teammate. During the filming of the scene, Waititi and Hemsworth were hosting a Make-A-Wish child. Between shots, while spending time together, the child told him, "When you see Hulk, you should say, 'He's a friend from work.' It would be funny." Hemsworth loved the idea, and they shot the line on the spot. I'm sure the kid was excited seeing his line that he came up with actually filmed for a superhero movie. I mean, I'd be totally excited. But imagine how happy this kid was when not only the line made it into the movie, but also featured in the movie's trailers. I would call that a wish fulfilled.
18.
Conan, 2011. Fact number 1. Reboots happen, whether they need to or not. Sometimes they end up being great, but most end up making people ask, why did this even have to be made? Fact number 2. Sometimes a star will take a role in a film for a paycheck, whether the movie will be good or not, while others take a role in a film that is far, far different than what ends up on screen. The studio gets a hold of it, the marketing department gives them notes, the studio executives figure out the ways to make a bigger return on their investment, and before long the movie that hits the theaters isn't even close to the writer's original script, the director's version for the film, or the actor's intentions for bringing the character to life. Such is the case with the 2011 reboot of Conan the Barbarian. The original Conan hit theaters in 1982, and it was good. Not great, but most assuredly a true cult classic. It was also the movie that really put Arnold Schwarzenegger on the map and got his career rolling. It made complete sense to do a reboot with a new, hot young actor. That actor was Jason Momoa, whose career was just starting to take off. Momoa was excited to be on board. They had their great script and a solid director. He was passionate about the project. And then the studio got a hold of it. You know what happens next, right? They made it into something it really wasn't meant to be. As Momoa said in a recent interview with British GQ, I've been a part of a lot of things that really sucked, and movies where it's out of your hands. Conan was one of them. It's one of the best experiences I had, and it was taken over and turned into a big pile of I think it's safe to say that he wasn't impressed with the final production.
17.
Jaws. Jaws is the first ever summer blockbuster, and the last blockbuster is somewhere in Alaska. Seriously, movies weren't released the way they are now until Jaws took over the world when it was released on June 20th, 1975. There was a huge marketing campaign, and the iconic theme music was being played all over TV and radio, which had audiences in a frenzy to see it, pun intended. But if the movie wasn't good, none of it would have mattered. Fortunately, that wasn't a problem with Steven Spielberg at the helm. Producer Richard Zanuck had insisted that the film include some real shark footage, and that really wasn't going to happen in their filming location. But Spielberg had an idea. He sent some shark experts to Australia. For one scene in the movie, Richard Dreyfuss's character Matt Hooper is attacked and killed while in a diving cage. Spoiler. The expert shark photographers shot some underwater footage of native sharks. They had with them a small diving cage and actor Carl Rizzo, who is a little person to put in the water with them to give the shot the proper scale. At one point, while Rizzo was on deck, one shark in particular became annoyed with the empty cage and ripped it apart. Spielberg decided to use the footage as he thought it to be very impressive. In doing so, the character of Matt Hooper was spared a gruesome death and lived to see another day. Although, not another movie.
16.
The Matrix. This is a quick one. In 1999, a film came along that changed the way movies were made and showed audiences an experience they would never forget. That movie was The Matrix. It was a huge hit, making more money than anyone would have ever predicted. Everyone saw that green code scrolling down the computer screen and became mesmerized, feeling oddly like maybe, just maybe, they too were living a life in a technological dream world. But the Matrix code didn't hold the secret to the meaning of life. It was actually just sushi recipes. Lots and lots of sushi recipes.
15.
Dracula, 1992. Did you hear the rumor that Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder are actually married? Also that they're one of Hollywood's longest lasting married couples? It's a ridiculous story because everyone knows they are not married, but Ryder and Reeves have started multiple films together. One of these movies was 1992's Bram Stoker's Dracula. While filming in Romania, actor Francis Ford Coppola had an actor play a Transylvanian priest that performs a wedding ceremony for their characters. Not really believing their performance, Coppola decided it would make sense just to get a local priest and have him do the service instead of the actor. The priest came, performed the ceremony. Ryder and Reeves both said their I do's, and that was that. The first shot was a full ceremony performed by an actual priest, which in Romania means that the ceremony was authentic and very real. Years later, while doing press interviews for their film Destination Wedding, they were asked about the rumor. Ryder reminded him about all the details, and he said, "Oh my gosh, we're actually married." So, are they really married? Probably not. Although, technically they actually are. Or as Keanu put it, at least under the eyes of God. On a side note, the scene was filmed on Valentine's Day. I kid you not. Nicole Kidman you not.
14,
What We Do in the Shadows. Indie films have come a long way in recent years. What was once the territory of independent filmmakers like Kevin Smith, Michael Moore, and Quentin Tarantino has become a place where big movie stars and directors have flocked to the forums for their prestigious films. There are now even independent studios, which, come to think of it, how does that even work? Independent films are independent because they are not part of a studio system. Anyway, Taika Waititi is now one of the top directors in Hollywood, no question. But back in 2014, he was an unknown writer, director, producer that had a movie he was desperate to make called What We Do in the Shadows, which was basically The Office, but with a creepy old house and vampires. Seems normal, right? The thing Waititi didn't have was a budget. He had to find things for the movie wherever he could, even if he had to resort to less than legal means of getting them. In an appearance on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, Waititi told one of his favorite party stories, and it goes a little something like this. When I did What We Do in the Shadows, we didn't have much money to do that film, and The Hobbit had just wrapped. Man, I don't know if I should tell this, but I will. Our production designer, in the dead of night, took his crew to the Hobbit studios and stole all of the dismantled, broken down green screens and took all of the timber, and we built a house. He went on to explain that he has no idea if Peter Jackson, who directed all of the Tolkien movies, ever discovered what they did. But you gotta do what you gotta do, I guess, right?
13,
Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters is iconic. It's been picked by many film lists as the best comedy of all time. It spawned 2 sequels, a reboot, a cartoon series, classic video games, but we almost never got the movie as we know it today. When Dan Aykroyd wrote the original script, it was set in a world where ghosts and ghostbusters were normal things, like police or paramedics. It was also written with a very different cast in mind. Aykroyd originally wrote the script with himself playing the role of Egon Spangler, John Belushi as Ray Stantz, and Eddie Murphy as Peter Venkman. But due to Murphy passing on the role because of a prior commitment to star in Beverly Hills Cop and John Belushi's tragic death, the whole thing needed to be rebooted. When the producers cast Bill Murray, things were bound to change even more. Murray, as almost everyone knows, is a gifted improviser and known for throwing his own lines in during filming, which is usually a good thing. The best example of this happens when, while mid-shot at the New York Library, a crew member accidentally tipped over a bookshelf. As you can see in the film, everyone spun around to see what happened. Murray, never breaking character, turns and says, "This ever happened to you before?" It was such a funny and unexpected moment that director Ivan Reitman decided to keep it in the final cut.
12,
Wonder Woman. Every movie goes through reshoots. It's inevitable. Sometimes people who don't really understand this think that it's a sign that the movie is in trouble. This is rarely the case though. Reshoots are usually planned for as part of any actor's contract. After primary shooting of Wonder Woman was completed and it was being edited, the director, Patty Jenkins, saw that there were shots she still needed. So she called Gal Gadot, who happily agreed to come back to set. There was one problem though. Gadot was 5 months pregnant at the time. Many of the scenes were action scenes and they needed to see Gadot's face. Gadot was still in phenomenal shape and was happy to do the scenes, but she had a pronounced baby bump. The solution? Costume designers made a modification to one of the Wonder Woman costumes that had an opening for her belly that was covered with green screen material. So, They fixed it in post.
11,
Gone Girl. In the 2014 film Gone Girl, Ben Affleck played a man whose wife is missing, and he becomes suspected of possibly killing her. The movie became a big hit, even nabbing Rosamund Pike a Best Actress Oscar nomination. But at one point, Gone Girl was very close to never being completed at all, more like Gone Movie. Gone Girl was directed by the acclaimed David Fincher. Fincher is a man that is laser focused on even the smallest details in his movies, and his record for success is stellar, having made films such as Fight Club, The Social Network, Seven, Mank, and The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. The man knows what he's doing. But things got rough on the set of Gone Girl between Fincher and Ben Affleck, causing the entire production to completely shut down for 4 days. And the issue was a huge one that neither man was willing to budge on. In one small scene, Affleck was supposed to be attempting to not be seen or stand out in a crowd. One of the items that he was scripted to wear was a New York Yankees hat. Affleck flatly refused to even put it on his head. I do not blame him. Go Rays, suck it Yankees. See, Ben grew up in Boston. He is a lifelong Red Sox fan, also suck it Red Sox. And the hatred between the Yankees and the Red Sox is serious. Speaking of which, I have to see right now. Pause for, no, keep rolling. I'm checking what's happening here. Hold on. Rays. Top of the sixth, Rays are beating the Red Sox. Suck it, Ben and Boston. Thanks for Tom, by the way. Anyway, it's arguably one of the biggest rivalries in sports. Affleck explained that he would wear the hat of any other team in Major League Baseball, but absolutely refused to wear anything Yankees. And Fincher was dead set on that for that scene, that it absolutely had to be the Yankees. In the end, cooler heads prevailed and a compromise was reached. Ben ended up wearing a New York Mets cap instead, while essentially ensuring that he would never be asked by Fincher to be in any more of the director's films.
10,
Poltergeist. Poltergeist is widely believed to be a cursed film. In fact, the entire original 3-movie series of Poltergeist is believed to be under some type of curse. Some of the many stories of weird occurrences are: Heather O'Rourke, who played the series' main character Carol Ann, died at the age of 10 from a misdiagnosed bowel blockage. Dominique Dunne, who played Carol Ann's older sister, was strangled in her driveway by her ex-boyfriend when she refused to take him back. 2 other cast members died of less strange circumstances, one from stomach cancer and another from a failed heart/lung transplant, but they did die during the time that the films were produced. Actress JoBeth Williams stated that in an effort to save money, the producers used real skeletons for the climactic pool scene, and one of the cast members performed an authentic exorcism one night after the shooting. But the one that most people don't know, but is definitely the most disturbing, is that the iconic scene where the brother Robbie, played by Oliver Robbins, gets attacked by his clown doll that is possessed by the spirits attacking his family. The clown almost actually killed the boy. A mechanical replica of the doll was created with a mechanism in the arms that would wrap around Robbie's neck and appear to be choking him. The mechanism malfunctioned during the filming of the scene and started choking the young actor for real. Robbins couldn't breathe and started trying to tell that to the director and the crew. Everyone watching the scene thought Robbins was doing a bit of improv, and they were loving it. It wasn't until Spielberg saw the boy's face changing color that he realized the boy actually could not breathe and rushed to help pry the clown off his neck. So maybe there was a curse after all.
9,
The Hangover. The Hangover was a pretty fun, not great, but very funny mega hit. Audiences just kept going and going. Something about 4 guys trying to figure out what happened while blacked out on what could possibly have been the greatest night of their lives really connected with people. That's a bad thing, right? People shouldn't have anything in common with those guys. It's just wrong. Anyway, for a good part of the movie, Ed Helms was without one of his front teeth. His incisor, in fact. And there was no movie magic involved. When Helms lost his baby tooth as a child, an adult incisor never grew in, so he's always worn a fake tooth there. They decided to write it in the movie, and Helms simply popped it out while filming.
8,
Toy Story 2. About 3 years after Pixar had changed animation forever with Toy Story, a new team was hard at work putting the final touches on the sequel, Toy Story 2, an original name. While cleaning up some files from a previous save on the server, someone put in a code that should have worked fine. Unfortunately, it didn't. Nobody is exactly sure what happened, but at once, animators' workstations began freezing and a technical director began to notice that the numbers of files on the servers were rapidly decreasing. Upon opening some of the files that were still there, they could see 3 or 4 characters. After closing it and then reopening the same file, there was only 1 character, and then none. In the end, 90% of the movie was just deleted and gone. And then, when all was thought to have been lost, supervising technical director Gail Sussman remembered that while she had been working at home after the birth of her son, she had sent all of the updates and had them stored on her home workstation. They rushed to her home and carefully loaded her workstation into her car to take it back to Pixar. When they finally got it set and the machine booted up, all the files were there. Looks like even in 1995, work from home was a good idea.
7,
The Ring. The Ring was one of the most unsettling, creepy horror movies of the 2000s. The film has a really strange, almost sterile look to it. The special effects were convincingly supernatural, and the music helped make the movie that much more unnerving. But if you would have told the actors working on the movie at the time that it would have been an unforgettable experience, they definitely would not have believed you. The stars of The Ring, Naomi Watts and Martin Henderson, were convinced that it was going to be, at the very least, really cheesy, or quite possibly an unintentional comedy. See, they felt completely stupid in what they were doing. Watts even mentioned that she was sure people would be laughing at them and their careers would be damaged. But, as is so often the case, editing makes all the difference. Once they finally saw the final film, their fears subsided. Everyone else's, however, had just begun. I still don't care there. There's no way I'd watch that tape. No way. And I just mean the movie. Not even the actual tape in the movie.
6,
It. Actors have to completely immerse themselves in their characters. They must understand the mind and motivation of each character they play. Jim Carrey lived 24/7 as if he were Andy Kaufman while filming Man on the Moon, and Heath Ledger locked himself in a hotel room for 6 weeks to get into the mind of the Joker. They then have to be able to physically show that understanding. For Bill Skarsgård, physically becoming Pennywise in the movie It was easier than most people think. See, Skarsgård is 6'4" and very thin, so he already towered over his young castmates. The smile? Again, that's all him. No prosthetics or CGI was used to create it. When producers told Skarsgård they were going to make the demon's eyes look in different directions, both of his eyes moved to opposite corners, as he said, like this. Needless to say, they were shocked. In an interview with Icon, Skarsgård explained that for the mental part of Pennywise, he thought of it as not playing a human character, but rather a predator, a being that loves darkness and embraces evil. There are people in the real world who are that bad. I asked myself, what is the most monstrous and evil thing I could think of? As he said in various interviews after playing the murderous clown, I was so miserable, comparing his time in production to being in a destructive relationship. But he also understood that this is the process actors have to follow to embody a character. For Skarsgård, however, the process was at times a bit reversed. It seemed that Pennywise got into his head. He went on to say that he would have nightmares about the demon entity. Every night he came and visited, Skarsgård said. It was either me dealing with Pennywise as a separate entity, and then also me as Pennywise in circumstances I didn't appreciate.
5,
The Birds. Alfred Hitchcock was one of the finest directors to ever put images to celluloid. He is known as the master of suspense, and the title is well earned. He was also a pretty crappy human being. Rumors always swirled about how Hitch had a bit of a thing for his leading ladies, but none more than Tippi Hedren, star of both Marnie and The Birds. Hitchcock acted as some sort of Svengali to the budding ingenue. He gave her a contract where she was his actress, and anyone that wanted to hire her had to go through him. Around the same time, Hitchcock cast Hedren in The Birds. This, according to Hedren, is when Hitch started trying to make sexual advances towards her. Hedren was having none of it, and spurned him at every turn. In those days, producers and directors held actresses' careers in their control. When she told him that she would never give in, he said that he would ruin her career, which he did. He wasn't content with just damaging her career. He turned into a vindictive bully as well. While filming The Birds, he made Hedren's life hell. After promising that no live birds would be used for the climactic scene, not only did he have the crew assist him with throwing live birds at her, he also tied them to her arms and wrists to get them agitated and attacking her. After yelling "cut," everyone was instructed to walk away from her, leaving the birds tied to her while ignoring her as she cried and pleaded for help. He may have been one of the greatest directors of all time, but hopefully no one else ever takes his examples of intimidation.
4.
Jennifer's Body. The film Jennifer's Body was completely misunderstood. Nobody realized that the movie was not a sex-filled horror film, but rather a feminist film about how young women are often trapped by a society that uses and suppresses them. While it was a horror movie, the film was more about women taking ownership of their lives and bodies by removing their suppressors by any means necessary. And the movie bombed. It garnered small box office and poor critical reception. But why? Today, the movie is well received and gains fans year after year. In the Me Too age, Jennifer's Body has become better understood, more meaningful, and completely relevant. So, what killed it upon its initial release? Well, the marketing. It was marketed as a sex-filled horror movie that was more about how much guys like to fantasize about Megan Fox rather than about the actual content of the film. Critics went into it with a certain idea as to what it was going to be rather than what it was. And many of the guys that showed up disliked it because it was the male characters who were getting knocked off because of their treatment of females. According to Screen Rant, one marketing person sent notes to the writer, Diablo Cody, that said that the film's worth boiled down to 3 words: Megan Fox hot. Soon after, Cody left the movie business altogether.
3.
Matilda. Based on the Roald Dahl book, Matilda tells the story of a young, genius girl gifted with magical powers. Her parents are dismissive and abusive. Her school is oppressive, and the principal is out to get her. The only person in her life that is supportive and nurturing is her teacher, Miss Honey. I guess you could say Matilda had a really rough life. In reality, things weren't much better for Moira Wilson, the young actress who played Matilda. She found out during filming that her mother had been diagnosed with terminal cancer. Her despicable, abusive on-screen parents, played by Danny DeVito and his real wife, Rhea Perlman, became her off-screen source of strength. The couple became her on-set parents and helped her cope with everything she was going through. The support didn't end when filming did either. They continued to be there for her well after production wrapped. Years later, Wilson gave an interview where she said she was worried her mother would never be able to see her in the film. This apparently came to pass, as her mother passed away just 6 months after principal filming ended. She didn't find out until much later that DeVito had actually taken an unfinished rough cut of the movie to the hospital and showed it to her mom before her death.
2.
The Mummy. Who doesn't love Brendan Fraser? Almost everyone thinks he's awesome, and we are loving his newfound career resurgence. Many people are patiently waiting to see if he will remain in the videos that are shown during the Revenge of the Mummy ride at Universal Studios in Orlando, Florida. After screenings of the Tom Cruise-led Mummy reboot, the comment heard most was, "But where's Brendan Fraser?" People are convinced that the film failed at the box office because he wasn't in it. What many people don't know is that because of The Mummy, Fraser came very close to no longer being with us at all. Because of a shot gone wrong, he was almost strangled while hanging from a noose. Let me explain. In a scene where Rick, Fraser's character, is being hung in a gallows, there were 2 sets of shots filmed. First was the wide shot of Rick dropping through the platform when it opens beneath him. A stuntman was used for the drop, and everything went fine. But for the close-ups, they needed Fraser to be in the noose. They called action on the first take. Fraser acts like he's choking. Easy. Then the director says he wanted to see more tension on the rope, so they pulled a little tighter. And Fraser was standing on the balls of his feet. Calling for a little more tension, it was pulled again, leaving Fraser just off the ground and choking for real and unable to speak, at which time he blacked out. The next thing he remembered was waking up on the ground with an EMT leaning over him calling his name. Needless to say, he was done with shooting for the rest of that day.
1.
Rocky Horror Picture Show. The one thing people really love to do when they watch a movie is to look for Easter eggs. The little hidden items or lines in a movie that make references to something else have become an obsession for many cinephiles. But where did it start? Well, it all began with the miserable, stressful, uncomfortable production of the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Probably the worst of all the Rocky series. Doesn't even make sense. There's zero boxing in it. It's very confusing. Anyway, filming in late fall and early winter just outside of London in Oakley Court, a county house/mansion in Berkshire, England, the production was grueling. Late fall and early winter in England is always raining and usually freezing. At the time, the manor house, which had once been used to film many Hammer horror films, was in major disrepair. The wind blew through the walls and rain ran in through the roof. They had one warm room for people to thaw out, and that was it. It was so bad, lead actress Susan Sarandon finished out production with a case of pneumonia, and fellow castmates have said that she should have been sent to medical care. In an effort to boost morale and have a bit of fun, and because they had a tiny budget, the director Jim Sherman decided to have a massive Easter egg hunt throughout the house. In the end, either they did too good a job hiding the eggs, or the cast was so miserable they just gave up because they were never able to find all the eggs on set. Consequently, there are at least 3 visible eggs in the final cut of the film. Audiences at midnight showings of the movie have always tried to look for the Easter eggs, and thus, a legend was born. So, do you know any other weird or fun movie facts? Tell us about them in the comments below. You never know. Maybe one day we'll use it and give you credit. Once again, I'm Mike with List25. Also be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, find us on social media, tweet me, tweet List25, Instagram, do all that fun stuff. And maybe, just maybe, we're working on a Discord server. We'll see. So, see you next time, guys.
Be sure to click that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss out on new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Share them with your friends and help us consistently conciliate curiosity. And if you want even more lists, check out these videos here or just head to our website at list25.com.